Societies and communities throughout the world have developed expansive sets of explanations and experiences relating to the environments in which they share a home with. Today, these knowledge systems are often referred to as traditional ecological or Indigenous knowledge. They include sophisticated arrays of information, interpretations, and understandings that guide societies throughout the world in their numerous interactions with the natural world. Australia's Indigenous culture represents the oldest surviving culture in the world, with certain practices dating back as far as 80,000 years ago. Prior to European settlement, Indigenous Australians lived as hunter-gatherers, with a strong relationship and dependence on the land and agriculture for survival. For the Indigenous Australians, their way of life radically changed after the 18th and 19th century due to European settlement. Indigenous people were displaced from their ways of life and were forced to submit to European law and later encouraged to assimilate into the Western culture.
Travelling through country today, I saw development and then masses of flatlands where millions or billions of trees have been totally destroyed. And I think they had some stock on them or even grazed some grain food on it. There's nothing there. So what has happened in comparison with over 50,000 years of Anangu or Aboriginal management of this country, within just over 200 years, a stupid culture of destroying has come in and just killed everything and messed up the whole of this country to what it was. All they had to do was find out how and why the land was kept in the condition they found it. And I think they would have found out it wasn't because we didn't know what we were doing, but it was because we knew that living trees, living everything, was a better way to find yourself in because it gave you a better way of living. But when you look at so many animals that's already been destroyed, they're non-existent anymore. So many birds that's been destroyed, they're not in existence anymore. So many plants that once was, is no more. You name it, we've lost so many species of every creature you can think about. Oh, it's unreal. Just what we've allowed to be destroyed. They're finished forever. There's a sign, if we don't pull up and do something about it, we are going to kill ourselves. It's as simple as that. You always look at history if you want to know if there's a future for your people. What are we leaving for our children and their children's children? We should be ashamed of ourselves of the destruction that has occurred just a little bit over the last 200 years to what was there, maintained and looked after for the many thousands by the Indigenous nations that looked after everything. We can easily make the difference by starting to care for the environment, caring for country.
McGregor explores the notion of TEC, traditional ecological knowledge, which supports the acquisitions of environmental knowledge from Indigenous people, and this has rapidly grown over the last 20 years. TEC has emerged because society is starting to realise that Indigenous people throughout the world develop sustainable environmental knowledge and practices that could be used to address global issues which face us today.
Sustainability is currently taught in the classroom using the Victorian Essential Learning Standards, the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority, and through sustainability programs and policies which schools have implemented into their classrooms. Sustainability is integrated into certain standards throughout the different domains and implemented into all of the core domains of VALS. VALS' aim is to support students in developing a set of knowledge, skills and behaviours that will prepare them to create a future which is sustainable by developing an understanding of the interaction between social, economic and environmental systems and how to manage them. ACARA has introduced sustainability as a cross-curriculum priority, which is studied through English, mathematics, science and history. ACARA states that education for sustainability develops the knowledge, skills, values and worldviews necessary for people to act in ways that contribute to more sustainable patterns of living. Resource Smart, Australian Sustainable Schools Initiative Victoria aims to help Victorian schools minimise waste, save energy and water, and promote biodiversity and cut their greenhouse gas emissions. $8.3 million has been given by the government to further extend the Resource Smart program over a 4-year period.
Today, Indigenous history and culture is taught in the classroom following the guidelines of the Victorian Essential Learning Standards, VALS, and the Australian curriculum. VALS highlights that there are 5 interrelated Indigenous themes in the VALS. These are land, culture, history, political and civil rights, and Indigenous cultures today. The study of Indigenous perspectives in education promotes an understanding of Australian history, identity, culture, and contemporary society. Students in the primary education system study the Indigenous themes through history and geography, civics and citizenships, the arts, and English. The Australian curriculum aims to teach about the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders communities through the interconnected aspects of country, place, people, and culture. Embracing these elements enhances all areas of the curriculum.
For years, Indigenous people have worked in harmony with the environment and used the resources it has provided without destroying the land. They have built their attitudes and beliefs on the land and in caring for the environment. Indigenous communities have lived in this way for thousands of years, way before the settlers arrived, in which they had constructed a way to live sustainably and in harmony with the earth. These values and beliefs are important to promote in young children, and this should be done through education. Children need to be exposed to local Indigenous knowledge as it can help to benefit the values and curriculum needs of Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander and sustainable education through VALS. By incorporating local Indigenous knowledge into the classroom, children can develop a strong understanding of this knowledge and a sense of sustainability. Taking them outside into the community to participate in the Indigenous environment is equally valuable, with this experience assisting in the understanding that in order to care for others and ourselves, we must appreciate and care for the earth.
Fishing, we catching a brig. When the river's low, we jump off the bridge. When we get home, we play some dig. When the street over, we go to the river and swim. When we go fishing, we catching a brig. When the river's low, we jump off the